Awesome.
Okay, hello everyone. We have got a really, really interesting chat today with Michael Shanks, who's the CEO of Budibase. Budibase is a low-code platform that you can use to build internal tools, admin dashboards, multi-step forms, CRUD apps, so create, read, update, delete. I'm sure that will come up. Now, you may be thinking that low-code sounds a bit scary, but in the case of Budibase, it's not. It's a low-code platform you'll actually enjoy using. So in this workshop, we'll look at Budibase's new features, do a little demo, and we're going to see what's new with Budibase as well. And I had a play with Budibase earlier. It's so easy, and as someone that enjoys the design elements as well, it's really cool how customizable it is. So I think we are in for a treat. Michael, are you all right to share whatever you have to share?
I'm good. I'm ready. Yep. Thank you very much for having me today. I will get started and share my screen. So, yeah, like you say, Budibase is it's a low-code platform, but it is about as no-code a low-code platform as you can get, and it is built for operating inside an organization, so inside a business, and handling a lot of internal processes. The term internal tools have been used a lot. We also like to talk about business apps, because it is internal, but Budibase is also good enough. It's beautiful enough to be able to give the apps that you build to external people as well, and people who even people inside your organization who maybe aren't completely familiar with like your internal processes. I'm actually running on Budibase Cloud at the moment, which you can sign up for free at the moment. You get your own nice little subdomain there. So the screen you see here is basically your list of apps. I've just got one there. I just created this. And from this section is where you do a lot of administration of your deployment, your applications. So like say that this is the apps list, and then just a quick overview of these other general administration things you can do with Budibase. So of course you can add new users in here. Again, I've only got one, but from whenever we start to build out apps, it's really important that you're able to first of all invite users to your instance of Budibase, but also for each app that you build, you need to be able to secure it. So if I go into this user, for example, I can see that's the one app that I had listed there, the service log app, and all your apps will be listed down here, and you can define per user who's allowed to see what app, and what kind of access that they have, and the access itself is defined inside the app, so it'll be completely app dependent. But this is all about security, like who has access to what. So moving on then to this auth section on the left as well. So typically, when you're inside an organization, you'll want single sign-on. And all single sign-on means is just that little button, sign in with Google, sign in with whatever your provider is. Sometimes Active Directory is a very common one in large organizations, but you can basically connect to any single sign-on provider, and log it and set up with that. Few other things you can do: you can add your own logo in there and change the name of your organization. That's just how your login screen will appear when people try to log into it. So I will move on then to the creation of a new app. So I'm going to go back to this apps list. So I'll create a new app. And this screen is just presenting us with just a few simple templates that we can have to to get started on Budibase. And if you're new to it and you just want to get a flavor for Budibase, to see what it's like, I would recommend just choosing one of these templates that you'll just be able to have a poke around. And this is something that it's actually got a simple interface here, but this is something that will really look to expand over time, the number of templates. And we'll also look to have people contributing templates. So think of Airtable, the Airtable universe, and we'll want people to build their own and publish them here. But I am going to start from scratch, and I'm going to just call this vehicles. So I'm going to just create a little list of vehicles. I'm going to pretend I am a mechanics workshop. So what Budibase wants you to do to begin with is set up your data. Now, Budibase does come with its own internal database, and what I mean by that is, again, think of Airtable, where you just build out everything yourself through this interface, and that is what this top option here, Budibase DB, is called. Now, we do support a bunch of other data sources, databases that you can connect to. I will get to that, and you'll see that there's no reasons to be frightened of those either, because they're quite well supported. But I will choose Budibase DB for now. And I'm going to create my vehicles table. Now, just draw your attention to this little switch here, generate screens and design section. Just keep that in the back of your mind, because I'll remind you about that in a minute. So in this instance, I'm just going to upload a CSV because it's pretty quick to get started. That'll just read my file, my CSV file, and allow me to import some data into the application. It's just going to read the header fields. I'm going to change this to an options column. Same with model. And this is just my list of vehicles that I have in my shop. So create that table, and that imports my data for me. Now we can, in this interface, we can go in and edit the data as we need. We can add new rows from in here. Now it's important to realize this isn't the app that users will use. We're in builder mode, so we're still building out our application. But you can do a certain amount of management in here as well. What we can also do here is add new tables. We can add and create relationships between tables. So exactly like Airtable, really, you can create related tables. But I'm not going to go too heavily into this data side of things right now. We've got our data in. I'm going to skip right over into the design section for now. So I did talk about that little switch we saw, which said generate screens in design section. So whenever we created our new table, the vehicles table, we got a list of what we call screens down the left-hand side. And all a screen is essentially a URL within your app. So Budibase produces a real web app, and it has different areas, different URLs within it that we call screens, and that you can navigate to and fro. So by default, then we got these three screens generated for us. We got the vehicles list, which is just a table. We got the edit vehicles screen, which is a form, and then a new vehicles screen, which is again a form, but for creating this time. And actually, as of this point, we have a web app. So if I just click this little preview button in the top right, that's my home screen. We can change that, and this is basically a fully working web app that we can use now. So let's create a new record. Does all the things that you would expect. And one thing that is interesting about Budibase is that it's a very responsive app that gets output. So you can see as I navigate between the screens, it's actually very fast to run. There's no big page refreshes or anything. And that's one thing we really focus on is the user experience of the apps that are produced with Budibase. So I'm going to go back, and just we can of course go through a lot of these elements, and a lot of the things you'd expect to be there, like creating new components in the screens, and laying things out and changing the colors. It's all there for you to see. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into those, but one thing that we support out of the box, which is very important for us, is mobile. So we can change the size of the screen right in the preview here, and by default, all the components that you use when you're using Budibase are mobile ready. So it should generally work by default when you're using the Budibase components. So actually, one of the reasons for this is a lot of the use cases we see are a lot of the target user, the target people are using these apps are people that are working out in the field. And so when I say field, I mean it could be someone on a factory floor, it could be someone in out in logistics, out in a truck somewhere. So there are people on the move, a lot of people filling out forms, safety checks on machinery, that sort of thing. One of the most common things that we hear people come to us and say is, we've got people walking around the factory floor, filling out stuff in a clipboard. They bring it back to their desk, enter it in an Excel spreadsheet, and it gets sent to a database somewhere. That is something that Budibase excels at. That kind of workflow. So forms over data, basically just inputting. So CRUD, as you mentioned at the start, Jack, it was creating, updating, deleting data, and then of course listing it on this screen. So I'm actually going to go right back to the start now, and get into something maybe is a wee bit scary, and I'm going to start talking about SQL databases. You may find this a little bit frightening, but one of the things we're trying to do here is put a really good experience over the top of SQL databases. And for anyone who doesn't know what SQL is, it's really it's like the most popular type of database that is used within organizations, and it allows you to create what we call relational data. So if you think, when I say relational data, think of projects and tasks. So you can have a project like I'm building Budibase, and you can have lots of tasks underneath that, like I'm building the data section, I'm building the design section. So that kind of project task structure is, it's relational. So the project is the parent of the tasks. And that's really what a relational database or a SQL database is. Now, the reason why I bring this up, because whenever you go into any organization of any sort of size, you're going to encounter a SQL database. It's not, it's the Budibase internal database is fantastic for creating brand new apps internally, but often that is not the reality of life inside an organization. You're going to want to connect to these existing SQL databases, and we want to enable non-developers to be able to do that, to be able to build apps over the top of that data. So I'm going to do this quickly. I'm just going to build the same thing, the same app. So again, start from scratch. I'm going to call this vehicles SQL. This time I am going to choose Postgres. Okay, and that is just a type of SQL database. So these are just details that whoever has set up the SQL database can always give. I'm just copying a few connection details in. This is living in the cloud somewhere, but quite often, these databases will be hosted inside an organization. And again, this is another thing that Budibase really excels at. It's people being able, because it's open source, and it doesn't matter if you don't know what that is, but it's open source, and we support self-hosting really, really well. So that means you can take Budibase, download it for free, host it yourself inside your organization, and it means it can actually access these databases. So I will continue. Got a bit carried away with the hand gestures there and forgot that I was actually building something. So I will connect to this database and hopefully it will connect. Okay, so what has happened here is it's connected to my database, and we'll see down at the bottom here we've got just a list of 2 tables that it has read directly from my Postgres SQL database. And if I just go ahead and save that, and go in, and we can browse these tables directly. Now again, this data is living completely outside of the Budibase platform. I'm actually hosting this on Google Cloud, and so it doesn't come pre-packaged. It can be anywhere at all. And again, you can view data in here. You can edit it directly in here. Coming soon in the next month or so, you'll be able to also create and add columns in here, just like you would do with an Airtable database. So we've got that data connection in. And again, just going back to this design section quickly, I will show you. This time we didn't auto-generate the screens itself, because you could have 100 tables in that database. We don't want screens for them all. But I am just going to click this little plus button, and this will give me the option of creating those same screens we saw before. So we have the vehicles list screen, which will just display my list of vehicles. And again, you just see that same screen you saw before. So the point of all this is really that you can, the experience between the Budibase database and the SQL database is basically the same. You can create the same interfaces, the same apps over the top of data that's existing within your organization, and we aim for it to be really simple and to do that. And our focus over time will be to add more components and more template screens and things like that that'll allow you to do things like this really, really quickly. So again, if I just add another screen, this time I will do the vehicles detail screen. And that just gives me, as you can see, the form for the vehicle. And once again, if I run this app, then that's just as we saw there, that's the vehicles list connected to my SQL database. So our aim here is really to take this existing data and make it super simple to create these apps over the top of. And I haven't gone super deep into all the different things you can do with manipulating the components on the screen and stuff like that. But simplicity is key here. And I don't even think I've shown much code at all. I don't think I've shown any code, but there are places where you can do code and little bits of JavaScript that we can add in different places, but it's not a requirement to know it for this platform. One very important thing I have to show you here that everybody loves. We go into magical dark mode, and look at that, we've got a lovely dark app. Everyone loves dark mode. That's the best bit. And you can actually change what dark mode means, what the different colors are. So if I can change my nav bar color to a nice bright red, Joe, who's our designer, will be tearing his hair out at my choice of coloring. But yeah, there's a certain amount of customization you can do in design. And actually, for anyone who has been following us at all, or maybe saw us in the last video, like it seems like 10 years ago now, but in the last 100 days no code we've actually stripped back a lot of the design options. Like on the right hand side here, we used to have a lot more sort of CSS. We took a lot of it out on purpose. And the reason for that is, first of all, simplicity. It's a lot easier to navigate through things. And second of all, with the type of app that you're building in here, they're largely inside the organization. You don't need a whole lot of bells and whistles like you would do if you were creating a whole product. So the idea here is to keep it really, really simple with the design options you have, and then control the overall theme with this here. So control your basic colors. And this we will be adding to over time as well. So you'll have more themable options over here. But in general, we want to keep the design as simple as possible and easy to use. So the last thing I'm going to just briefly brush over in this is the automate section. Now, the automate section is really, you can think of like Zapier. So it's just if this then that kind of thing. So I'll create a new automation. I will in this case choose a cron trigger. And what a cron trigger is, by the way, is it's basically a timer. So I will say, let me see. So get recent vehicles. I'll say notify. And for this particular trigger, I'm going to say, what a cron trigger does, is it runs on a schedule. So I'm going to say, so this is going to say run this every hour. And I'm going to add an action, and we can do things like querying a row. So I want to pull a vehicle out of my database, for example. So I'm going to choose query. This adds a little step in. You can choose the filters, and again, this will be your SQL tables in my case, or whatever tables you've got set up. So I've got my service log table there. Didn't really talk about that much, but and I can add a few filters in here. So this is me just pulling data out that I want to do something with on every hour. But I'm not going to go through all the whole setup of this. We can do, but basically this is a Zapier-like way of pulling data from places, manipulating it, and maybe pushing it in other places. It's a simple automation flow there. So I think that is really all I was going to run through. I was going to keep it quite short because you can go quite deep with it, but I will leave that to everyone who's interested.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for that. It's awesome to see it done by the CEO. Like when I was messing around with it, I didn't fully understand everything that you went through there. So that's epic. So should we have a few questions from anyone? Does any brave soul want to kick us off? And if not, I've got loads of questions, so don't feel pressure.
I've got a few, but Dan, if you'd like to go first, by all means. But
no, you go. It's
good. Lovely, thank you. That's brilliant, Michael. I was there at the first 100 days Budibase workshop, and it does seem like a long time ago, but it was impressive then, and it's impressive now. But it's good to see you've been learning your lessons and and sort of adapting as you need. So that's fantastic. I would be happy to have a look at how the automation build plays out if anybody else would, because I was interested to see the sort of workflow logic side of things that you might be able to do with Budibase? How can you sort of get that data, manipulate it and send it back? I see you could connect to Zapier and Integromat to sort of send it away and do that, but if you could do that internally, obviously that seems like a nicer way to do things. Can you natively crunch some numbers and then update a table or create a new row, things like that?
Yeah, you can do all that. I mean, yeah, I can certainly get back into it. Let me just, I will go back for you, sure. It was a bit hand wavy there, wasn't it?
No, it was good. You get, I think you get the passion when you get those Italian hands moving. I know you're not Italian. They're just like, I was there.
Yeah. So yeah, you can do a bunch of stuff in these actions. Okay, so I think I was being a little unimaginative when I was trying to think of the things you can do here. So let's pull some rows out of our service log table. So I didn't describe what service log is, but it is a table with data. So in this instance, I'm going to say, give me all the service logs with the date that is more than, I'll just put a value in. I'll go way back. I'm not sure what's in there, but and I'm going to choose a sort column. Okay, so this is just me pulling back some data. Okay, did that save? Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm at 1. Okay. So what do you actually want to do with that data then is the question. So say I wanted to, well, let's do something. I'm actually going to go right back, create a Budibase table. This is going to be a bit contrived, but I'm going to call it audit. I'm going to create a column called service date. And I'll add a wee description in there. So this is me actually using the Budibase internal table, by the way, in conjunction with a SQL table. Let's call it name. And that's one of the benefits of you can actually combine different data sources in here as well. I will save that. Go back to my automation. So I built a new table there, very simple table. That's my query rows. I'm going to add another action that is going to create a row this time. And in this case, I'm going to say create a row in my audit table. And there are the columns. There's my service date. And in this instance, I'm going to use this little binding button on the binding, which allows me to pull data from the previous step. So in this case, I am going to say step 1 outputs. And this is where we probably need to put some different UI in there, some better UI, because it gets a bit magical. But this is something you kind of have to know. So I'm going to say rows.1 description. Of course, I'm using a date field, so I'm going to put service date in there. I'll do row 0. And then, of course, with the name field, I'll change that to description. So what I'm doing here really is setting up so every hour this is going to run. It's going to pull a bunch of rows from one of the tables, and it's going to put it into this other one. And one really nice little feature we have in here is the ability to test these automations right in this interface. So if I click finish and test, this allows me to put some data into my test row. I will put some dummy data in there. Now, as you go through each little step, it shows you the different inputs and outputs to that step. So this allows you to sort of debug as you go. So that's the input that the trigger gave me. You can go through and try and read that. And then this is, you can see there, in my query there, it's actually outputted an error. And that's probably because some kind of setup that I've done in there, because I've just rattled through it. But you can go in and, edit what's going in and out of that query, how that query is set up. And then that same data will get fed through into this create row as well. So you basically fiddle with these little responses and fiddle with the tests until you get it right. And let me see it. Probably nothing useful is going into the audit. Yeah, a blank row is going into the audit table there because it didn't quite set it up properly. But that's what's behind the automation. Again, most of the steps we have in there are really internal sort of things. So you can also add things like a filter, which means only continue if a condition is met. So only continue if like the status is incomplete or something like that. You can do an outgoing webhook. All that means is that you're making a web request to some other service somewhere. Maybe you want to, and that service could be Zapier, or it could be Salesforce or something like that. You could send data off to other places, and there's also lovely JavaScript scripting, so you can write a bit of code in there that manipulates your data, before you do anything with it. So maybe that answered you a little bit better than my initial skipping over.
It's perfect. It seems, like you've got your own internal Zapier thing going on there, sort of lightweight Zapier, which I think is great. Is there limits to how many steps you can have going through?
There aren't limits to the amount of steps going through. What we don't have is branching. So typically what you'd see in these platforms is like, all these different flows. Like, if this, then go off this way, and then more branching. So it is meant to be quite simple, like a few simple steps. And if you need something more complex, then you should reach for a Zapier or a Tegromat or something like that. So it is meant to be simple, and provide some,
Brilliant. With just go back to what you were saying about how it excels with people out in the field filling out forms and collecting data. Is there the possibility for someone to use it remotely but offline, and then it's sync back up when it's online?
I love that question. The answer is no, but no, that has come up quite a few times, and so not to get too into the weeds technically, but we use the whole of Budibase is backed by a certain database called CouchDB, right? And one of the things it excels at is offline use. So the answer to your question is, in future, absolutely, this will be possible, and I think very important. Right now we don't do it, but that's where we're going, and I feel like that will be a massive superpower of ours in the next. Well, I don't know when we'll do it, but yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's only worthwhile using if you can actually use it. And if you're out of service and remotely, then you're sort of stuck. And but yeah, that'd be an awesome feature. You sort of touched on having the mixed sources, so you could actually have sort of multiple databases, and then a third base sort of collect manipulations from the both, I suppose, and sort of working like that. That's powerful in itself. Well, I think that's great. With the internal Budibase database that the sort of native one, is there sort of storage limits on that? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there's no storage. I mean, no, technically speaking, there's no storage limits. I mean, certainly whenever you talk about our cloud platform and stuff, we'll be putting limits in the tiers and that and whatnot. But no, there are no storage limits in it itself. Now, what I would say about the internal database is that it, like, underneath it is not, it is actually not relational, and so what that means is if you've got very, very highly relational data, like you've got like some very, complex set of order processing stuff going on, then you should reach for a SQL database at that stage, and that's that's one of the reasons why we have that option. So the internal database does support simple relationships, like one between a couple of tables, but you would hit limits with that. Just technically, if you're trying to do something really complicated, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I've got one more question. I'll shut up, Jack. Sorry, I can just keep going. With regards to the users there, so can you have sort of permissions, role-based permissions, so certain users can see certain the windows that you were preparing, and certain people can do certain things?
Yep, certainly can. So I'll just run over this quickly. So if I go back into the design section here, so so I click on a screen, and over the right hand side you see access here, and this is a set of rules, okay, and I'll show you where these are defined in a minute, but you basically get a few rules by default. So I can say that only the admin user can see this screen, so it just won't be available if you don't have that rule. You can also create public screens, and public means you don't even need to be logged in to see this screen. Okay, so you can do that. Now, another thing you do with rules is in the data section itself. So you can go into each individual table and say manage access, and you can say what rules have access to read and write this table. And the reason actually that's important is because if I look at this screen now, so I look at the vehicles list screen, like sure I can block off this screen to certain users, but if underneath I've set my data up to be accessible to like a basic user, then there's still a security hole there. You could still access this data through our API. So we need to lock down the data and the screens separately. So yeah, you can do all that, and then you can also, if I just go into users here, you can go in and edit rules, and you can create brand new rules as well. So you can do all that.
That's perfect. You've answered all my questions perfectly. I appreciate it. I haven't used it for a while, so I need to revisit and get going again. I think it's I think you've done an impressive job there. Congratulations. It's brilliant. But yeah, I'll be quiet for a bit now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, that's great. Really, really good questions there, Mark. I think you've got a customer, Michael. Can I ask who your ideal customer is? Because you've talked a lot about a huge range of people that seem to be using Budibase, and as such, you've actually made a lot of design decisions and general, like quite decisive decisions to cater to particular people. So is it mainly like factory, workplace? Is that the idea?
Well, so I mean, we would still describe ourselves as being horizontal. So horizontal meaning cross industry. So I did describe those sorts of people in terms of industries, but really this can you can use it in any type of workplace, right? But really getting down to the user, the person who's building the app. This is really targeted at what we would call IT professionals. Okay, and an IT professional is to us is someone who doesn't necessarily know how to code, but will often know a little bit of code, but is someone who is technically minded. So quite often you see things like database administrators, system administrators, IT managers, and even some more technically minded business people. In fact, anyone who's created one of those bananas Excel spreadsheets, which does everything, is probably going to be quite successful with Budibase, because you just need that tech. You just need a bit of a technical mind, and actually, I'm like a lot of no coders that we've spoke to over the years who are probably a little bit unconfident about their skills, that we've met. You can see straight away that they're technically minded people who just have never built up the skills for whatever reason. We see that all the time, and especially when you see people who have plugged together different combinations of Zapier, and it's actually harder than coding, to be honest. So people with technical minds, are what we call IT professionals, and this is really who this is targeted at. And we get a lot of developers as well using the platform as well. So
okay, yeah, that's really interesting. I guess it's kind of intriguing to see the direction of Budibase, because it seems to be moving very quickly, and new features. I went on your YouTube channel before, and it's like new feature, and I'm just like, wow, these guys are moving very rapidly. And speaking of that, you talked a little bit about the future of Budibase with this offline usage. Do you have kind of like a clear kind of trajectory for Budibase? And if so, do you mind sharing maybe a few insights? You don't have to tell us everything, because I recognize there are things probably being developed that you don't want to say.
Yeah. You know what? It's such a huge product. It covers so many. You've got the back end, you've got the database connectors, the automation. There's so much to it, and right now, and certainly the next 6 months or so, what we're really focusing on is what we call internally as developer success, and when we say developer, but by the way, we mean anyone building an app with Budibase, and it's just allowing people to get from that point of idea to getting their app out there as quickly and easily as possible. So there'll be a lot of focus on ways we can simplify that building process. Like whenever you get to use Budibase at the moment, if you go in and start using that designer, moving components around and stuff, there is a bit of a learning curve in there. To be quite honest, like there's quite a bit. It is quite flexible, but there's quite a lot to do. So one of the things we're introducing over the next month or so is this idea of blocks. Which is almost like a collection of components. So for example, rather than just having a table component, we're going to have a table with a filter, which just puts all the stuff in the screen for you, that you need. So we're going to be building up that kind of those higher level components. That'll just mean people can it's just about getting people to that's a point of success much quicker. So that's really what we're focusing on at the moment. And again, building out templates is going to be super important for us. And hopefully someday allowing people to build their own and publish them. Now, as time goes on, I don't think I wouldn't say we'll run out of builder features to build, but you'll get to a point where we won't want to add a ton more stuff, because it'll get more and more bloated if we do that, and we want to keep that simplicity. That's so important to keep the simplicity. So we'll probably be gradually moving towards building out more of that management stuff that I showed you, like in the app portal, the user management and things like that, and building things like auditing, so like tracking what records were created when, and things like if you've ever worked in an enterprise scenario, you've got the concept of environments, which is like you have a development environment, you have a testing environment, and supporting that sort of that transition between all the environments. So things like this, which are sort of much more around management of the platform, is where we'll gradually focus more and more effort over time. But yeah, and then of course we've got our connectors, all the different things, the integrations, connectors, and hopefully one day people will be able to write their own code their own components, code their own integrations, and that'll be growing that that ecosystem out. So yes, that's a very
sounds
scattered
like a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And has there been like an example of someone using Budibase that you've been like I did not even think that we were making this possible for this industry, or like, because it seems like your platform's a little bit like Notion in the sense that there's just an unreal amount of stuff that you can build and do, and it can be applied to so many different industries and even individuals. Has there been anything that comes to mind where you're like, that's so cool?
Yeah, you know what's come up very recently, actually, that makes complete sense, now that we've seen it. It's so, again, we go back to forms. Forms are so important. But you know, we got someone come along that says, not only do the people who are filling out the forms, the people who are filling out the forms are the ones using the app, but also we want the people who are we also want the end users of the apps to be able to define the forms as well. So that's like a whole, because if you think about it, like if I'm defining a form in the builder itself, is in Budibase itself, it's me, the developer of the app, that's doing it. It's not the end user. So again, back to your comment about Notion. In Notion, it's the same interface for everyone. So they do kind of support that at the moment. That's their bread and butter, is that anyone can come in and build out and define what the interfaces are. But it's like, sort of other end users of apps being able to configure the forms themselves, and that's been one that we can't support, but someone's coming to us, and it makes it introduces a couple of things, because the additional complexity that we need to support in that is that the old data that people put in before, it can't change. So if someone comes in and edits a column, that the stuff that people put in before, that has to stay as it was. Okay, and that's something that we need to do, and it makes complete sense if you think about it in terms of like safety checks, especially, like, you need that history, but their forms also need to evolve, and that is something, again, due to our choice of database actually underneath that, we will be able to support going forward, and we will. And I don't even think I don't know anyone who can do that. So maintaining that history of previously filled out forms whilst still allowing the form to evolve. It's a bit of a mind melter, but
yeah, it is a little bit like, wow, the user is actually defining the form themselves. Noel, this is a great question. Did you cover hosting and pricing? We didn't. Maybe that is
of course.
Yeah, a good way to end the call as well. Just so if there's a kind of idea for people who are watching this.
Yeah, sorry guys, I just got the time wrong. I've used a couple of other platforms, and I mean, your pricing and hosting and stuff, it's very unusual compared to most no-code tools I would have looked at. I mean, there's kind of self-hosting, and you can set up your own hosting, and you've got free forever under a lot of these and stuff like that. So I'm trying to understand what your pricing and business model is, right? To be honest, right?
Yeah. Everything's free. So we are an open source product. Okay, so what that means is you can take the platform and you can download it and you can host it yourself for free. Okay, so that's essentially what open source is. Now, in terms of our cloud platform, like, it's literally it's 3 weeks old. All we have is a free tier right now on our cloud platform. So we don't have a pricing model. The most simplest thing and the most likely thing that we will do around that will be per user pricing, which will be similar to other platforms that you've seen. Now there are there are reasons why we might not do that. Like, for example, the external users thing, like that causes a problem for people with lots of external users that they want to. And I believe if you look at Stacker, I believe that's why they price the way they do. They don't price per user; they price platform charge. So we've got a couple of options here and a lot of things to consider, and that's why we're extremely vague about it because it's a young platform. But yeah, in terms of self-host, go mad. It's open source. Take it. We will be adding premium tooling, so proprietary tooling on top of the open source product down the line, so sort of sometime next year, but that's not here yet. So yeah.
Wow, what an answer!
When do you expect to have pricing, kind of hosted pricing?
When do we expect to have it? I would expect to have it I wouldn't say this year. I would say probably within the next 6 months we would certainly have it.
Okay. I recognize the accent. Actually, it's good to see a couple of people in Ireland at this game right now.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else have any other questions before we wrap up, because we're coming to the end of the
Just quickly, if I may, you alluded to it could potentially be used as like a SaaS. Is that right? Rather than an internal tool, we might be able to build something in it that can be used as a single point for multiple people to access with their own instance, or is that not a viable thing?
I mean, so okay with their own instance. I mean, to put it this way, that's not where we're aiming. You can try, you know what I mean. But we're focused on business apps. That like I talked about. So in terms of building your own product, that's not what we're looking at. So yeah.
If I built an internal tool for a business that was templatable, let's say, and could be used by lots of other similar businesses, I'd have to give each business their own instance of a Budibase app to.
Yeah, well, I mean, this could be done. So you saw that apps list there. So all you would have to do there, if you built that out for a business, you could export your app, import it back in as a new customer, hand out the logins. You could do all that. You could even script it to make it work. What you would find a problem with is that if you had 100 different customers, 100 different instances, you wanted to update your app for everybody, then that's a problem. You have to do it 100 times. It's because it is a bit of a problem then. So
no, that's fair enough. That explains it for me. Thank you. Spot on.
Yep.
But surely that would depend on how you structure your user database, right? I mean, I've done that with no-code platforms, right? So if you add when you're adding users, right, if you add a company field, right, and when an individual company logs in, you can filter the data by that company and stuff like that. So you still have one instance of the app overall, right? But you're filtering data by company, right? So you don't end up with multiple instances of the app, right? I mean, I know what you're saying, Michael. That's obviously a safer way to do it, right? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you could do that. I'm almost certain you would need to use a SQL database for that, to do it that way. But I think you could do it. Again, I think just going back to, again, we're not target focused on that. I think another issue you would find is, we've, like I said earlier, we've retracted a lot of the bells and whistles in terms of CSS design. So if you're building a product, you really want it to be branded, like really heavily branded and your style. So we've taken a lot of that in, if you know what I mean. And so you might find yourself limited by that a little bit. But yeah.
Awesome. Okay. If that is all the questions, that was a very difficult last question there, Mark. I thought that was going to be like a nice little quick one, and you just dropped heavy.
Answered expertly. No, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today, Michael.
Well, there's some very difficult questions coming in, but very, it's really interesting to see where Budibase is now and where it's going, and you've answered all those amazingly. I think you've got some new users. Thanks so much, Michael. I will update you when I have the recording. I think Max is going to put it on like a unlisted on YouTube, and then we'll send it to the 100 Days No Code community. But yeah, I'm sure we can sort that out afterwards. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for Dan Perry for leaving a question before he left. And but yeah, awesome to see what you're up to and where this is all going. So thank you so much for giving us your time, Michael.
No, thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.